When I was 12 years old, my mom had just started trusting me enough to stay home alone. We lived in a quiet, peaceful neighborhood, a kind of place where people didn't lock their doors during the day and still waved at each other from across the street. It was the kind of town where stranger danger felt like something you read about online, not something that happened on your own block. It was a Friday night in early spring. My parents had plans to go out to dinner with some of their friends from work. They told me they'd be gone until around midnight. My older sister was staying over at a friend's house, so for the first time ever, I was going to have the whole house to myself for the night. I was beyond excited. My parents even left me $20 to order pizza and told me to wrap up the leftovers and keep them in the fridge. My plan was simple: pizza, video games, and staying up way past my bedtime. Around 6:30, I ordered a large pepperoni from Gino's, the local pizzeria just a few blocks away. It was a regular spot for us, a family-owned place with checkered tablecloths and old-school booths. I'd been there a dozen times, always with my parents, but that night I was on my own. I went back to playing a James Bond game on my PS2 while I waited. Nightfire. I still remember the intro music. Everything felt perfect. The doorbell rang about 25 minutes later. I grabbed the $20 and headed downstairs. When I opened the door, the guy standing there wasn't who I expected. He looked older than your average delivery guy, mid-30s maybe. He had a long, scraggly beard, thick glasses, and wore a dirty black trucker hat. His shirt was stained and too tight, like it hadn't been washed in weeks. Still, I handed in the money and told him to keep a $4 tip. He looked me over for a second, then leaned slightly to the side, peering into the house behind me. "You alone here?" he asked. Immediately, alarm bells went off in my head. My parents had warned me about people asking questions like that. I quickly said, "No, my parents are upstairs." The man stared at me for a beat longer than felt comfortable. Then he nodded slowly, handed me the pizza, and walked back to his car. I shut the door fast, locked it, and stood there for a second with the box in my hands, heart beating just a little faster than before. I brushed it off. I ate 3 slices at the kitchen table, wrapped the rest up in foil like my mom told me to, and then went back upstairs to play Agent Under Fire. The hours passed quickly. By 11 p.m., I had pretty much forgotten all about the weird delivery guy. Until the doorbell rang again. I paused my game and walked downstairs. I figured my parents were home early, but something didn't feel right. I called out, "Mom? Dad?" through the closed door. A voice on the other side, not my mom or dad, answered. "Hey, I need help. Can I use your phone?" It was a man's voice, low, strained.
I paused my game and walked downstairs. I figured my parents were home early, but something didn't feel right. I called out, "Mom? Dad?" through the closed door. A voice on the other side, not my mom or dad, answered. "Hey, I need help. Can I use your phone?" It was a man's voice, low, strange, like someone trying not to sound nervous but not succeeding.
This happened to me in the summer of 2021. I was living in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, renting a small house with my older sister while I was finishing up community college. The neighborhood was the kind you wouldn't think twice about: quiet, clean, mostly families and retirees. The most exciting thing that ever happened was the occasional lost dog or someone's Amazon package going to the wrong address. Until one night, something changed. Our backyard was fenced in, 6-foot wooden panels all around, and we had a little patio where we'd sometimes sit out late at night and talk. Our next-door neighbor, Mr. Avery, was a retired widower, super nice guy. He had a motion sensor floodlight on the side of his garage that would light up our fence sometimes if squirrels ran across it. Anyway, it was mid-June, humid, around midnight. My sister was out of town visiting her boyfriend. I was up late studying for a final and had the back door open with the screen shut to let in the breeze. That's when I heard it. Click. It was subtle, like a gate latch being opened. Slowly. I paused my music and listened. Nothing. But something about that little sound made me uneasy. So I walked to the kitchen, turned off the porch light, and peered through the screen into the yard. At first I saw nothing. But then, the motion light next door flicked on. And that's when I saw it. A man, no more than 10 feet from my back fence, just standing there in Mr. Avery's yard. He was facing my house. Perfectly still, arms limp at his sides. His clothes were dark, baggy, almost blending into the shadows. He wasn't moving. I squinted, thinking maybe it was Avery himself. Maybe he had sleepwalked outside or something. But this guy looked younger, bigger, and something about the way he stood, like he wasn't confused or scared. He looked focused. I slowly stepped away from the screen and locked the back door. About a minute later, the light clicked off again, leaving everything outside black. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I saw Mr. Avery in his yard and asked if he'd seen anything weird. He shook his head and said, "Nope, haven't noticed anything. You sure it wasn't a possum or something?" A possum doesn't stand 6 feet tall and stare at your house. Later that night, around 1 a.m., I was watching a movie with the lights low. I'd almost convinced myself it was just a fluke. Maybe someone had cut through the yard and paused for a second. Then the motion light went off again. I jumped up and ran to the back window. This time he was closer, not in the neighbor's yard, inside mine, standing right behind the wooden fence with his face barely visible through one of the vertical slits. I couldn't breathe. He wasn't just passing through.